Welcome, dear listeners, to Satanist Next Door. We're your hosts, Lilin
and Tommy Levine.
Whether you're an open-minded, curious onlooker or a fellow Satanist seeking camaraderie, our goal is to share our personal experiences and delve into the intricate tapestry of Satanism in our daily lives, occasionally inviting other guests to share their unique perspectives, leaving no pentagram unturned. We'll explore how our beliefs shape our views on society, dive into struggles and triumphs we've encountered, and reveal the humanity that unites us all. So grab your favorite chalice and join us on this captivating journey. Satanist Next Door is ready to peel back the curtain and offer you a glimpse into our world, one captivating episode at a time.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Satanist Next Door. So today we have a whole bunch of people on the phone to talk about all of this fuckery going on with anti-satanic laws and shit like that.
The revival of the Satanic Panic.
The revival of the Satanic Panic, yeah, definitely. Since we have a bunch of people on and I don't want to mess up anybody's name, we should do introductions. So why don't we go around the virtual room? Who wants to start?
I'll go first. I am Nooki Sale-Hayton, and I am the resident weed expert. And I'm going to pass it to Murphy.
I'm Murphy Fawkes, and I am a professional cunt, and I will pass it to Lilith.
Thank you all. I'm Lilith Starr. I've been involved with PSD for 10 years now, and I started the 5th chapter PSD Seattle.
And I'm Lucien Greaves, co-founder of and spokesperson for the Satanic Temple.
Hey, Lucien, welcome back. So actually, welcome back to everybody, because we've had like everybody on this call on the podcast at different times. Mm-hmm. So,
and everyone knows who the fuck we are, because
yeah, everybody knows who the fuck we are. They listen to the intro. So, all right. Well, we've done a couple of these already. Like when the Arizona bill hit, we did one on that, and then during that, I was like, "Hey, watch, another one's going to come out." And then I was planning another podcast episode, but then the Iowa one came out the next weekend, so we went ahead and did that. Then we kind of skipped. We did some other subjects, and then Lucien, I've seen you post on it. You know, I've seen some people be vocal, but I've seen a lot of silence too.
Yeah, I think everyone here has been really outspoken, but I think we need to encourage more. So
yeah.
So and just to add, now Mississippi has joined the party, and they're also they've also proposed a respect bill, resist escalating Satanism, and I don't remember what the rest of the acronym is. It's a pretty strange one, if I remember. But
yeah,
obviously it's the same verbiage. It's the same acronym. It's likely coming from the same source. So this is probably going to be a persistent problem, despite the fact that the Iowa and Arizona bills have died so far. They could be reintroduced.
Yeah, it looked like the Mississippi one when I looked at it was almost a carbon copy of the Iowa one.
Yeah,
I think it was like word for word. It looked like they just sent the text file over and said,
"This is model legislation. This is coming from some kind of central organization that's trying to act in the same way as organizations like the Congressional Prayer Caucus have in the past." But our suspicion is it's new players who are even stupider than the Congressional Prayer Caucus, because at least the Congressional Prayer Caucus, when they were trying to create model legislation, Congressional Prayer Caucus or whomever else, when they were trying to create model legislation for something that's flagrantly unconstitutional, they at least tried to have some kind of legal theory embedded inside where they would lean their arguments into to try to make it sound legal or try to give a judge some kind of facile and unconvincing rationale for ruling in their favor. These don't even attempt that. These are bottom of the barrel, stupid bills, just stupid bills made for stupid people who don't understand the law, don't understand the value in a democratic constitutional system, and they are just completely ignorant. And these are the people sponsoring these bills now. They don't even write these things. They just put their name to them, and then the public will have to pay the legal expense if it passes.
Yeah.
And just to reiterate the types of bills that these are, they're display and monument bills. There's also 10 Commandment bills, and there's chaplain bills, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was speaking specifically about the anti-Satanist bills, but there's a whole new wave of model legislation now at the fore, and it's a real theocratic push, and it is definitely and obviously a threat.
Yeah.
And the last one, I think, 196 or 196 House, it goes into ritual abuse, which is really insidious to me because it utilized a lot of very satanic panic language where it's going into the repressed memory crap.
Yeah, so that was the Utah one. They looked like they kind of took a different sort of attack vector.
That one was pretty insidious, and I know with the Gray faction, that stuff is definitely top of mind. Holy shit.
Yeah, that's a whole topic on its own. But yeah, Utah has advanced a anti-ritual abuse bill, which we were hard pressed to figure out what exactly they were trying to outlaw in this bill. It doesn't really matter because really what they're codifying is this notion that these claims are true, right? The conspiracy theorists love this. In lieu of evidence, they can present official documentation as evidence, and they love to do that. And so you will see in conspiracist camps sometimes they will post affidavits from people claiming gang stalking or government mind control or, official reports that they wrote up or things they tried to litigate. And then they offer those things in and of themselves as evidence for their claims, regardless of the fact that they don't have evidence to support those claims on the paperwork to begin with. The litigation goes nowhere. But when you have people this stupid in public office, what we're dealing with now, the types of people who will sign these anti-Satanist bills, you also have people in office stupid enough to take these conspiracy theories seriously. And this is just straight up 1980s satanic panic bullshit.
Oh, it's straight from Geraldo.
Like you were saying. Yeah. And they trotted out victims, and the thinking there is that, nobody can say that somebody wasn't victimized if they say they were, regardless of how ludicrous the claims are. And they like to accuse Gray faction of just doubting all claims of abuse. But no, really, the question is claims that are recovered memories of abuse, which is where we get these claims of not only satanic ritual abuse, but also extraterrestrial abductions, past lives. Hypnotic regression has never been something that's accurately brought forth any claims with any historical veracity behind them. But now, of course, we're going to have this conspiracy scene again, kind of emboldened by the fact that you have people in public office at all taking this stuff seriously. Now they have this testimony, they're going to have these transcripts, and they're going to claim that this is evidence of this phenomena, because to them, any supposed eyewitness testimony, any anecdotal testimony, they don't seem to realize that that's the weakest type of evidence that is possible. They think it's the strongest. Yeah. And now we're going to have to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean...
But what were they making illegal, right? It's already illegal to kill people.
Yeah.
It's not like ritual murder was ever something you were allowed to do.
Yeah.
And we're also seeing bills, unrelated to us, where you just see idiotic bills being written where people are literally trying to illegalize what they already define as illegal immigration.
Yeah.
So this gives you some sense of just what's the state of disrepair American politics is in right now.
Yeah. I did appreciate with the Arizona bill where we got to call out one of the other senators said that Hoffman was anti-erection, so...
Oh yeah,
I did appreciate that.
Yeah, she one of the senators that was like, well, he's against erections because he changed the language from displaying satanic
to erecting.
I guess it was something with the language that display didn't work, so he tried erecting, and then one of the senators
erecting still didn't work for him.
Yeah, well, we know how much he's against erections, but this still doesn't work for us.
Well, there are ways to shame guys like him in ways that could actually hurt his reputation more broadly. Yeah. And those are the kinds of things we might want to work on if we have the time and inclination to, just go on the attack. But the fact that, general media in Arizona were covering this, and even the ones who didn't have any sympathy for us were skeptical of the vague wording of the bill and its broader ramifications, to the point where, one of the primary universities in Arizona has as its mascot a devil. Mm-hmm. And the thinking is, due to the language of the bill, this mascot, this Arizona devil, would be illegal in anything publicly funded or any public spaces. So that put people on edge. And that kind of thoughtlessness, that kind of irresponsibility in putting forward a bill that obviously has those kinds of negative ramifications, even if you don't care about Satanists, those are the kinds of things you can hammer on to show that this guy is an irresponsible asshole who has no business being in public office.
Yeah, and the part that I keep hammering people on is it doesn't matter if you're a Satanist or not. If they deem you're a Satanist, you're a Satanist. And we actually saw that with the Arizona bill, because the one senator for the first committee,
Hoffman.
The one that was against it, I forgot his name.
Oh, yes. No, you're right.
That was speaking up against it. Then they put a smear campaign out on him saying that he was sympathetic to Satanism, or he was they basically did to him what we were saying. Hey, look, you don't have to be a Satanist to be labeled a Satanist. Look at fucking Taylor Swift. She's a Satanist now. Everybody that they don't like is a Satanist. And that's why it's so dangerous to have these types of bills out there.
Well, there's real gray area, too, when it comes to religious belief, because when they say that Satan is universally recognized as the enemy of God, immediately I think of the research I did into a cult in the 1960s called the Process Church of the Final Judgment. They venerated equally Christ, Satan, Jehovah, and Lucifer. They saw them as being equal opposites, and it seemed like their theology kind of changed by convenience when they were kind of trying to market themselves and figure out who they were. And they never really, at least, in some segments, they were never quite clear as to whether they were entirely theistic or if they viewed these things as these kinds of psychological paradigms that exist within each of us. And we need to kind of reconcile these opposites and realize these, the Satan and the Christ within ourselves. And they started out as this kind of psychotherapy cult. But in any case, without getting into too much background about them, you could say, okay, this is a religious conception that doesn't agree that Satan is is recognized as the enemy of God, but is an equal opposite component in the universe that balances things out. And, other religious other people of a religious mindset can take that point of view too. But there, like the Process, they were often called Satanists because of this, because they utilize Satan and Lucifer. And often you'll see the conspiracy theorists completely ignore the Christ element, the Christian cross that they use, the Jehovah that they venerated, and all that type of thing. And I think we would see that happening if a bill like this came through. By convenience, they would say, well, the Process doesn't count. They were Satanists too. And I think they would say that of any sect that just didn't agree with this notion that Satan is universally recognized as the enemy of God, and that to venerate Satan is by definition to venerate cruelty and all that, and to reject everything that's good and moral in the world. And that is not the territory the government should be in. That was never the territory the government was supposed to be in. And to even see people thinking along those lines shows a real lack of public education. I mean, that a politician can even put their name to this bill that they didn't write and try to advance it without being publicly ridiculed into public non-existence is a sad state of affairs.
Yeah, it was really sad to watch the initial vote because everyone except that one senator that Tommy mentioned was in support of it, and they gave their reasons why, and they were explicitly rude to Satanists that showed up to tell them why they were wrong.
Yeah, if it wasn't for Mendez, it's who the senator was at the time that was actually speaking up. I remember when he said, is it because it's insulting to your religion? I mean, he did do well to redirect the points, but everyone that tried to speak up that wasn't confident in what they were trying to express, Hoffman made special attention to trying to rip them apart and to intentionally shake them just to make them look bad.
Yeah, and I've been on Twitter, and I've tried to provoke Hoffman. I've tagged him in things, and I replied to some of the things he posted, and I publicly stated that it's questionable whether he's literate, and he hasn't engaged with me. And I just want people to know you can do this. You can also call these guys assholes. You can call them out on this, and not only can you should.
Yeah.
And I think some people are worried about our religious status and whether or not they're going to run afoul of the Johnson Amendment, which, because of our tax exempt status, says we're not allowed to get into political matters. But I think if you're going to look for a model as to what's acceptable, if you're posting things on your congregation page, I would say use the model we put forward on our main TST page. But if you're wondering to what level you can fuck with these asshole politicians, look at my page. Mm-hmm. Like, I sent a personal mayonnaise commercial to former Senator Jason Rapert in Arkansas not long ago, containing a nude picture of me on a bearskin rug. It was actually Burt Reynolds' body. It was just a little Valentine's Day present to the homophobic Senator Jason Rapert. And, don't make threats or anything, but just feel free. Feel free to point out publicly how dumb these guys are. Go ahead, engage with it. That appearance of consensus, that appearance of mass outrage really is meaningful. Mm-hmm. People really, they take more from that than they probably should. And, conspiracists, our opposition, they're not concerned with evidence. They're only concerned with that appearance of consensus. Mm-hmm. They will sometimes post to me absolutely non sequitur responses to the things I said that don't address anything at all. And it's questionable what it's even trying to say. And then after their replies that make zero sense, they'll have people jumping in and saying, yeah, you fucking told them. And I think, well, that is really stupid. But I also think two can play that game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm positive that there's been some misinformation, some miscommunication, and maybe people just genuinely don't understand. I'm not sure. But I think you explained it well. But just to be clear, someone, the thing that people are worried about is that they feel like they can't comment on this because it's a bipartisan issue. And just to be clear, if you're talking about your religion, Satanism, as a Satanist and a representative of TST, that's something you can talk about as long as you're not endorsing a particular party or candidate.
Right. And that's I think some people are confused about that. I think if you just look at the basic rules, it's not that confusing overall. It might be counterintuitive to say personalize it, because I think in a lot of situations people will say don't personalize these issues. In this case, personalize it. Go after Hoffman, go after the guys who sponsored this bill, but don't put it in the context of the Republican Party, candidacy, voting, those kinds of things. But it's totally okay to say you are a stupid asshole and you are not qualified for anything, much less public office kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Don't encourage people to vote one way or the other. Don't, you even stay away from throwing them in larger political groups, even MAGA and stuff like that, and that doesn't really help your case anyways. I know people are really against having bipartisan support on anything these days, but that's a real problem. We really score a win when we can get people who are just genuinely constitutionalists, genuinely have some kind of patriotic mindset, and they might not like us, but they also might like less the idea of giving the government the green light to tell them that if they so chose, they could not identify with us. That should be insulting to anybody, whether they think they have any potential of ever doing that or not.
Well, and this is go ahead.
This is just something I wanted to ask you guys, because you're part of like a broader group of TST. What do you think is the communication error? Like, how can we improve this? Because I genuinely, maybe you can explain it to me, I don't understand why we have people talking about every other issue under the sun, taking political positions, but for some reason, when it comes to Satanism, they're silent.
I think that's a very multifaceted issue, though. I mean, it's going to depend on the leadership of each of the congregations and what's happening there. I think some people are afraid to speak because it's a very tinderbox type environment right now. I think they're afraid of backlash. There's some very anti-establishment groups out there that are involved. And so I think there's a lot of different things people are running into. And I think the biggest mistake they're making is being silent, because this is not a partisan issue. This is not an establishment issue. This is a freedom issue. And if you like having freedoms, this is a big one to kind of stand up and start taking notice and speaking about.
I think I want to be the devil's advocate real quick on what you just said, because both you and Tommy are in Texas, and you guys are probably the loudest congregation / TST members that I've seen. Like, it's actually very, very fucking awesome that you guys are doing that, and you are in Texas. Like, what is the excuse for anybody else? That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I'm fucking loud. So is Lilin.
And we were very against doing it at first because we have younger kids, we have a lot of things to lose, but it's those very things we have to lose that compelled us to speak. Because as our family has gone off and done their own things, we've seen how I have daughters, they've been affected by legislation. We have a religious belief that we're very passionate about that's been affected by legislation. We have a lot of freedoms that have been affected by legislation, and we got tired of sitting by passively, because if it's going to happen, it's going to happen regardless of whether or not you speak. And now is the time to do something before you can't.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
I think I've seen congregations and ministry cover other issues that are political, like reproductive rights, with no problem. I feel like for some reason this got mislabeled early on, because the warnings I'm seeing are like, be active, but don't be publicly active. And it was almost like the person saying that was directly conflating that, just even discussing or sharing the news stories or sharing Lucien's really on point writings with the Johnson Amendment's prohibitions, which are very narrowly, you can't tell people how to vote, you can't support a particular candidate or party. But it's weird to me because, we all saw what happened with the photo and just chaos and, destruction happened. And I haven't really seen this talked about much at all. And I don't know why that happened. In my mind, I think there might be a disconnect between like what EM and our legal folks are working on, and then what trickles down to, say, the congregations and the ministers as the priorities to focus on. So when I started the 5th chapter in 2014, it was very obvious that the chapter system, now the congregations, and then later the ministry and the campaigns all exist, to support their own communities and their own projects, but also very much to support whatever EM is working on and whatever legal battles we are partaking in, regardless of whether it's going on in our state or region or not. And I'm not seeing that as much these days. It's kind of like there's a layer of, insulation there. And I think it would be beneficial if there was a way to like very much emphasize or encapsulate, like, this is the issue that we want you all to work on. And here's an actual call to action, if there is any, that we could spread out and disseminate to our members.
All right, let me get real here. Here's the problem we've been dealing with for 10 fucking years. Like, from the very beginning, we started up the organization. We've had a problem of narcissists joining with TST for a limited time, some of them doing absolutely nothing, having zero contact with executive ministry, probably having absolutely no participation in their chapters at the time, or very limited, or, their congregations later on, and then leaving TST for some kind of personal dispute they've had with people, or because they're disappointed about these general prohibitions we have about certain political grandstanding online, publicly, or whatever. But in any case, they weren't able to advance themselves as a spokesperson for the entire movement. They weren't able to turn it into something completely different. And then they start trying to get attention by talking about how TST is actually this organization that is secretly working towards these nefarious ends that benefit the enemy in various ways. And this was a formula that had worked for several people, and they've written all kinds of slander against us. And earlier on, it felt like an existential threat against the organization. And that is actually what led us to go with the separate pillar model, where EM decided we were going to work on the stuff we work on, and the congregations would be separate, and they could go, that would be as much autonomy as we could possibly give them. We don't ask them for anything. There's no buy-in, there's no dues, and they pretty much have latitude to do whatever. And we did that because we thought, now there will be no rationale for attacking us anymore. Nobody will have a reason to come at us with their misplaced dissatisfaction or their notions that we weren't doing what they want to do. They can have their own projects to work on and go about it that way. You brought up the picture, the whole Atlantic article. That didn't work either. So now we're in a position where I feel like we have a large body in the organization that really we don't have a whole lot of contact with, and then we're caught in a situation where people seem confused about what they can and can't do. And we're still just waiting for them to go on the attack again, because that seems to be something that's going to happen with a certain regularity. Right. So now we're looking again at revising the model in such a way where we do have that kind of contact, and we do integrate this, and we get rid of that pillar system, and we integrate the ministry under EM, so we can have that kind of communication. We can talk about projects. I still don't like the idea of making anything mandatory for people, and I don't think we have to. But I do think, anybody gets a pass. They're working, they've got different interests even, or they're just not ready for the fight for one reason or the other. But I feel like when we have something the size that we do, when, any individual person gets a pass. I don't even need to hear the excuse. But when we get to a point where, we have a broad organization and nobody's touching it, there's a problem. Yeah. There's a problem either in people's priorities or in that overall communication, which we know is a problem and is causing us to want to restructure. But that's just what we're dealing with. And at this point, the state of affairs is so dramatically at that point where we are either fighting this fight or we're not, that I just don't have any sympathy right now for the narcissistic cunts who are going to come at us in the way that they have in the past. And I'm willing to be very clear with them, just leave, if your interest is in something else, please go. If you're going to be dissatisfied that we're fighting directly against Satanism, trying to be illegalized rather than your other pet causes, there are organizations dedicated to your pet causes. We actually do take Satanism seriously. We take religious liberty seriously. We take the theocratic overthrow very seriously. We have very limited resources, and this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I just want to say real quick that I feel like all of this shouldn't be explained to anybody in leadership. I'm sorry. Because here's the other thing that I'm noticing. When the picture and everything, whenever there's an incident in TST, the TST's middle management is nowhere to be found in terms of accountability, in terms of what did you do to de-escalate the situation? What did you do to get EM on the same page? What did you do what did you do? Where were you at when this was happening? Because as a leader, you should be stepping in to de-escalate. You should be stepping in to look after your congregation, to make sure that everybody is calm the fuck down, not handing out pitchforks. Because if the structure is set up so that EM can operate almost independently, then why the fuck is EM being blamed for shit that is happening where they don't even have any type of oversight? And how come nobody has called that out?
Yeah,
that to me is a screaming, that's a siren right now. And I'm just like, what the fuck? So it's EM's fault, but they're not there, and so you're running the show, but you don't know how to solve your own problems, is what I'm gathering.
Well, it's misplaced priorities because it's preferencing optics over principles. And at the end of the day, if any of these bills pass, they're not going to have the ability to practice Satanism, which is why we're all here. So when they want to get on their platforms and talk about what they like and what they don't like and every other political cause under the sun, in TST's name, you're not going to be able to do that either if these bills pass. So you should care.
Well, yeah, because it's all going to roll up into being a Satanist anyways.
Right.
If you're this, you're a Satanist. If you're that, you're a Satanist. If you're this, you're a Satanist.
But if you look at it, like TST Wisconsin, they were out there doing their thing, and they got put in, they were in harm's way. Iowa was in harm's way. When the groups, different people in Texas went and did what they did, they were in harm's way. Florida's had people. There are people in leadership that are going out there, much like Lucien and everyone else that is very front and center. They're out there putting their ass on the line, and we need everybody else to step up and meet us because we can't carry it by ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say there's a minority of people that are doing shit, and then there's crickets.
I think some people aren't sure what to do. I know as a person in leadership, sometimes you have all the good intentions, you get involved with leadership, and then you don't exactly know what to do. And some people want to help encourage you and build you up, and other people will completely shut you out and tell you, I had to figure it the fuck out, you do it yourself. And I think there's some of the disconnect.
Everything I can do is assume good intentions from everybody, and just assume that they feel like they can't be engaged, or they're unsure about whether they can engage or how. And I've had that in mind, so I take ownership of the fact that EM's communication hasn't been good with ministry, but that's because we've been in 10 years of having to live in fear of just some kind of a new schism popping up just out of the blue, because literally some of the ones that have been the loudest I had never heard of until all of a sudden they were, calling me out for whatever and trying to destroy my reputation publicly. But I was speaking with Matt Kazaya, one of the lawyers, our lead counsel today, and he is also going to help us draft something up for everybody that will explain really what the hard limits are when it comes to the Johnson Amendment. And, the real fear with the Johnson Amendment originally and people's interpretation of it is that they could look at some of the Christian theocratic groups and think that we have the same latitude as them. And to be honest, the Christian theocratic groups are breaking the Johnson Amendment all the fucking time.
Left and right.
They do it with impunity. And sometimes they do it and they'll publicly state that they're intentionally breaking the Johnson Amendment. This has happened before, too. I think Pastor Greg Locke has been out publicly, canvassing for Trump and saying, go ahead and come at me kind of thing. And they're not prosecuting any of these guys. However, if they are going to prosecute the Johnson Amendment, it'll be against us.
Exactly.
Right? And it's just not going to matter. But even that being said, the restrictions are not too terrible if you actually know what they are and what you're doing. And we are writing that guide up for people now.
Yeah. And to your example, I saw a video on Twitter today, and it was a pastor, and he was doing his sermon behind his, podium. And he said, I want you to vote for, and he specifically said the name. Then he said, oh, wait, I can't do that because I'm not supposed to preach from the pulpit. So hold on one second. And he walked around, still on stage, to the other side of the pulpit, and he said, Now I'm an everyday average guy. Go vote for this person. I mean, they were just making fun of the Johnson Act, basically throwing the finger up at him. And it's public. And like you said, they're not doing a damn thing to him, but they will to us.
But, we have it. It's incumbent upon us because we're out there like this to do the right thing. We want people to do the right thing. We have all these values and we're standing by them. And I'm proud of that. But now we just have to help people navigate what that means as far as these conversations. And I think we can do that.
Yeah, but we're already not on an equal playing field. Like their use of the Johnson Amendment, we can only suspect we wouldn't be able to get away with that. But we can't just say, and this is what really pisses me off sometimes about self-described activists. They so easily throw in the towel and say, well, see, that's just the way it is. That's the way we don't have these rights. We're always going to be treated this way. We are just perfectly content to identify as victims and not fight the fight. And the fact of the matter is even though we're not treated equally right now, we can't let them fucking codify that. We do have the law on our side right now. Yeah. And we need to insist on keeping the law on our side. We need to insist that you not be able to simply reinterpret the law in a way that absolutely violates both the letter and the spirit with some kind of, a lot of these Bill Mill documents try to do. It's not about elevating Christianity. It's just about recognizing this heritage and history of Christianity, which is also a myth as well. When you see it laid out the way they do, it's usually based on the writings of this fuckhead David Barton, which if you're interested in that whole history, look it up. He's been kind of the primary fictional historian for the Christian nationalist movement, who's written the whole kind of story about the creation of the United States as a Christian nation in this parallel universe that they're trying to bring into our dimension now.
Yeah. And him and people like Tim Dunn, who are very happy to lean into the Seven Mountain Mandate that they're pushing everywhere. It used to be a very small group of people knew, especially in Texas, because it's strong here. And now you hear about it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, Texas legislature is almost all dominionist. So if they're in the, a certain political party.
Yeah, but I think that's go ahead.
I just want to say, I am really upset that we haven't been more vocal about this, because it's like, if Satanists can't show up for Satanists, why the fuck would anyone else care?
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I mean,
exactly. It looks bad. It does look bad. If it looks like I'm the only one out there, I'm not only a bigger target, but we are that much more susceptible, I think, to false allegations, especially when we've demonstrated so many times that we're willing to melt down over things we shouldn't melt down over, or things that we should handle internally that we have people running off and trying to make public displays of. It just shows that on the flimsiest of excuses, you can provoke us to turn against each other. And at this point, we should really be fighting to get ourselves in alignment and think these things through more clearly. And that is something that's always on the not even far back in my mind.
And so that's what we're trying to.
I feel like for me, I always think back to the Capitol in Indiana, and because I feel like that same apathy that we're seeing now, it was the same type of shit when that happened. And I was so happy that we all made it out alive, that we got home, and that we could, look back and be like, oh shit, we did that. But the days leading up to that, the day of the fucking event, even when we were traveling back, wait,
hang on. Just so in case people don't know, you're talking about the Satanic Planet performance at the Indiana Capitol that we performed because they had let a Christian nationalist essentially do a revival concert inside the State House Capitol building.
Yes. And so we went and did that, and it was scary as fuck. And the community, it was almost like nobody really gave a shit about it. And so when that happened, it was like, damn, okay, maybe they just don't give a shit about me. That's cool. But now we're here. Now there's bills popping up everywhere. And if you've been paying attention, and if you've been actually advocating for trans rights, you're well aware that this also happened with trans rights. These bills just start popping up, and they're going to start popping up on this side too. So you are aware that this is a pattern. You are aware that this is going to happen. where is the urgency? Because this affects you too. It's not just us. It's not just us going to the Capitol and getting fucking shot. Now it's you too. It's your freedom too. So where is the disconnect? Like, what is going on? Like, I really don't understand how, and actually, I will also go so far as to say that it's almost negligent of leadership to not make people aware of what's happening and prepare them for what's coming, and make sure that they have a support system, make sure that that their community is actually strengthened, that they can lean on each other, and that they can, I don't know, prepare.
We are Satanists. Like, when we're fighting things publicly, our place is really in these particular battles against the theocrats and in favor of us being able to identify as Satanists. But these things speak to other principles as well. Mm-hmm. So it's not like these things are irrelevant to some of the other social justice fights people are trying to wage. It's just we're not in the best position to do that. We're in the best position to be doing what we're doing. But if you look at what they're trying to do with things like these respect acts and things like that, they are trying to prevent us from being to identify as we choose to identify in any public capacity. Does that speak to any other issue you think in your mind? If you draw a hard line on Satanism and you say, no, the government does not have any place dictating how we identify. If you think really hard, you can also see that this has relevance to other issues that matter too. Yeah. But this is where our fight is best fought. It's not completely self-interested. Well, even if it is, it speaks to principles that resonate more broadly with everybody's rights, whether they want to identify as Satanists or not. It's a matter of identity overall in that case.
Exactly. And that's, I'm out there every day trying to explain to people that, because it's for me, it rolls back to, even if you're not a Satanist, or if you identify as a Satanist, or if you're, part of any other cause, they can just roll all that up into, well, you identify as this and you're a Satanist, it's all about identity.
If you're involved in any kind of activism, you're satanic, you're inspired by Satan. If you live in an alternate to them lifestyle sexually or individually, you're satanic, you're inspired by Satan. So whether or not you think that what affects us applies to you, the greater public, it's very easy to see if you connect the dots. They're going to associate you with us one way or another. And so when we fight as a community, we're strongest together, and I see it. We have a connection here in Texas with the pagan community. They recognize it. We forged good relationships there. We support one another. They see what's happening. Other people throughout other states are saying the same thing, and I see more support now than I think I have at any other point in my life as a public Satanist, where people do now come out and support us and do say, look what this means to the broader public. So how do we capitalize on that and continue these discussions not only with the broader public, but within our own community? Because that's where we seem to be having the issue. If you're here as a Satanist to wear a t-shirt, you might be in the wrong place. But if you're here as a Satanist, it might be time to go ahead and start doing something.
Right, but what you said was the exact issue. We are getting support from other people that understand, oh shit, this is wrong and all that, but we're not getting the vocal support from our own community.
As much. I see it, but as much, yeah.
Yeah, we get more support from the pagan community that we know, like the instance you were talking about, than we do from other
Well, even on social media,
Satanists.
I've been out there very loudly for a long time, and there's a lot of people that hate me, and that's fine. That's great. Good for you. But there's also a lot of people that have seen over time, and I'm often surprised, someone I didn't even recognize was paying attention goes, actually, I would rather have them hang out with me. I'd rather them in my church than you.
Oh, yeah. I've had Christians come and say, I'm a Christian, but I can recognize this is wrong. And if Christians are speaking up for, against some of this stuff and our community's still silent, there's a fucking problem.
Yeah. So
evagelicals.
Yeah, exactly.
We had at least one evangelical publicly posting that he would support us on, against Utah when it came to the chaplain bill and try to get us in, because you don't know. All kinds of religious denominations have at least some people who understand the value in a secular government, one that doesn't throw in their hat with one particular religious denomination or another. And I am totally turned off to the rest of the activism world, because I think the focus on pop culture, on comedians, on what's on TV has overshadowed things in such a way that it speaks to an attitude that I think is completely outdated, and one that doesn't realize the dire state that we're in. If you're worried that people are able to publicly say things that hurt your feelings, I think you're not really recognizing that people are doing things to literally take away your rights. And I don't give a shit if people are saying mean things about Satanists. They can fuck off. I will say mean things back. I will fight dirty. Yep. I am going to fight this battle dirty. And when people ask, does that mean you're going to rub elbows with, the fascist enemy or whatever? Yeah, probably. Today, I was talking to somebody I have professional contacts with, who himself has developed professional contacts with people we would definitely identify as our enemy. Is there a benefit to that? Yeah. He said he would ask, who's responsible for these bills? The ones they put forward in Arizona and Iowa, particularly the ones that are geared against the Satanic Temple. And he has a good chance of finding out exactly who's responsible for it in ways our research might not have. Those are the benefits. That is fighting to win. That is not being squeamish about having a reputation tainted by speaking to people who could have some benefit in this battle. I will win this any fucking way I can. Like, I am happy to have anybody on board with this. If you're fighting the battle, you are in. I've had to fire friends of mine, from jobs. I've lost relationships over this. It's been constant hell and kind of a nightmare. I am not going to be sympathetic to people's squeamish feelings about superfluous things and about optics. That's just not going to happen anymore. There's not going to be any real catering to that kind of bullshit. And I still feel like we give people all the latitude to do everything they want. It's just when I feel the attacks are turned on us and when we're in this kind of dire state of affairs, we really need to organize and get our priorities together. And that's not to say, like, I put that on everybody else. Like, we really have to do that at the executive ministry level. We need to look at the structure of this. We need to start communicating. We do need to unify the pillars and get everybody to a place where they know where to check to see what projects are available, where we need volunteers and things like that. But we also need people to be cognizant of the fact that these are the things we need. And, maybe we shouldn't be so open to people's superfluous and irrelevant bitching about some of the dumbest things or some of their most divisive behavior. I mean, we have to get beyond that. We have to start considering whether we identify as Satanists or whether we have different interests. I would rather, this isn't a numbers game for us. Like, I would rather have, 50 quality people than 50,000 people just waiting to put a knife in our backs.
Exactly.
Yeah. But that's going to scare people too, because that's what you constantly hear. Okay, you want to change the way EM works. You want to change what the pillars look like. And then everyone panics and holds their breath and they don't know what that means. And that's the constant feedback that I get. So I think one of the things that a lot of people are hesitant on is what is that change going to entail for them. So I feel personally that would be a great thing to kind of start with, to say, here's what we're doing. And I know it's not easy for you to say, yep, I know, magically here's the plan, I've got it all laid out, but that is one of the areas of anxiety I'm seeing.
I have a devil's advocate thing to throw into this, because I feel that the existing body of leadership should have already been figuring out a system of communication with EM, because why is it, like, at the end of the day, the problem that I see over and over is that nobody is able to solve problems. They just create problems and then hand it back. It just circles back to EM, and then eventually it's on their plate and they have to figure it out. And it's like we need EM to be focusing on the fucking bills that are attacking us right now. This admin shit should be handled by the body of leadership that was put in place to do this type of shit.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
that's all I had to say about that.
As congregation leaders, though, right, it is incumbent upon us to address our community's needs at that level, right? So if there's things happening within my community, my job is to listen, and then where I can, realistically, with what access to resources and whatever I have, address that or help them to find ways to fundraise or whatever they need to address those things. And if we were doing that from our level up, it would be way easier for EM to address all these other things because everything would be functioning. The problem is there's too many people off on their own little tangents, not paying attention to the things that they actually need to do.
And it's not just that they're not paying attention. Like in some of these cases, people have been explicitly told not to talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Whether that's intentional or not, like that's a huge miscommunication. And the fact that FIRE, FFRF, American Atheists, Citizens United, all of them, they've said more about this than Satanists have.
Yeah.
Other religions have said more about this than Satanists have because they know that they're going to be next on the chopping block if this goes through.
Yep. That's the point I make every single fucking day on social media.
We have these chaplain bills specifically, and we have a satanic ministry. Has anyone asked, is there a difference between a minister and a chaplain? Is there something I can do to help?
Well, and I know here in Texas, we've definitely tried to approach that. I know it's also happening in Florida, and they're also looking at it from their perspective for the people I contact with and speak to over there. But for Texas, it's a very vague program, and each district is allowed to decide whether or not they even want to implement the program. And then as far as the structure of it, well, chaplain is not necessarily something that has to be certified in any specific way. They don't need an actual education. They're replacing, master's level PhDs that are supposed to be educated in intellectual development and emotional development and things around children, whereas chaplains are definitely not. As to what is defined as a chaplain, I'll tell you, it certainly seems to be in the purview of Christianity solely.
Yeah,
and
but
you know that because you looked it up and you did your own research because you care. My thing here is, why isn't ministry as a whole working with EM, and why isn't there mass communication to people to tell them this is what we need to do? That's why I want to have this talk. Let's figure out solutions. Let's do better.
Yeah, I mean,
I think from the EM perspective, I have to assume that it's on us, and we do need to open up that communication. We need to be the ones reaching out directly now and making sure that people do understand the situation, what they can talk about, what they can't, what the limitations are, what we need from people. And when it does come to the chaplain bills, we're probably going to do another live stream update with the lawyers, but this is something we've been talking about. And you're right, it does look like in some cases it's very Christian specific, but whether or not that's constitutional seems to not have been challenged. And so it's the uncomfortable reality here is that if they start saying that they'll only accept chaplains who have gone to seminary, and that's a very kind of, that might be fairly non-denominational thing in Christian circles, but it certainly does cut out, Buddhists and others, and certainly, humanists. And for that matter, we've been talking about reaching out to some of the other organizations, secular organizations, non-believer organizations, humanist organizations, to in anticipation of precedent-setting litigation in which we would fight against narrowing the definition of chaplain to be somebody who has gone through some Christian-specific training. So that is something we are working on, but it's also, I would think our ministers would be interested in what it takes to be a chaplain. We're also going to look into what it takes for us to declare somebody a chaplain. What kind of certification we're able to give, what kind of accreditation we could possibly get. So some of the ideas they floated to kind of narrow the pool of people who could be chaplains in hopes of keeping us out are people with a master's of divinity. And I kind of feel that that's a bit of a bullshit thing too. You're going to say that a Satanist or a humanist chaplain is going to have had to have gotten a master's in divinity. I think that's a case we could fight, but I also think it's far better if we're able to get organizations on board that are
allies,
not Satanist organization.
Yeah, allies. We've been, since they passed a law here in Texas, and it's up to each district. We've kind of talked about, I don't want the chaplains in our school, but I kind of want our district to try so that we can,
for sure,
say, okay, hey, we're ministers and we'd like to join this program, and see if they push back and then what we could do there. As far as certificates, Lilin actually found one too, because our district has two different. There's the chaplains program.
Well, there's the police, the police and the ministry and police program they have, and it's the same sort of chaplaincy program that they are essentially trying to institute in students, with students. So they already have them that work with especially district police, and the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation is one of the ones they go to, the ICISF, and there's a certificate in specialized training for critical incident stress management that one usually needs to have to be involved in that program. And I've started looking at it because I want to apply to work with the police as a minister, although I don't know that they'll allow it. It's an entry into the program, and it all comes at the hardship of, and yes, financial stuff does matter, but to get the non-member certificate for this to do the program is about $150, and then there's about a $50 renewal on that. So in Texas, at least, that's some of the stuff that I've looked into, because at least getting into some of the chaplaincy program would then allow greater access if that's something that they're going to try, and then I'm going to try and challenge.
Yeah. I mean, at least giving it a try so we can challenge it, or possibly challenge it if they say no. If you've got the certificates that they require and all of that, then...
Right, and there's nothing wrong with learning crisis management anyway, right? There's nothing wrong with those skills. So it can be beneficial for us in the greater public anyway to go ahead and get involved at that level if we want to do these things, because it's only going to benefit you to have that education understanding of the process anyway.
Yeah.
One thing we talked about putting together was a list of open research projects that we have available, and just the type of thing that people could do online, perhaps, that we just don't. Because sometimes I don't think people realize what a small team is actually working on. So sometimes it's just like me or or Rachel or Aaron or Malcolm, and like we're trying to spend time looking things up and trying to figure out, again, like who's responsible for these bills, and what other what's the source of some other Project Blitz material, or what does it take to become a chaplain in a certain place, and things like that. And I think a lot of people don't realize that they could be helpful in that way. Sometimes it's just the tedium of looking for stuff, and we don't actually have access to this kind of thing. So I think that could be helpful too, if we set up something on whatever platform where we could just have like an information dump where later on we could vet through it and try to make it publicly presentable if that's what we were going to do with it. But there are a lot of things that are open questions that I have that I just haven't gotten to because I'm doing other things. And it's like that for each of us. And, just having volunteers interested in doing any of that. And it doesn't even have to be something that people publicly know you're doing if you're worried about that. And, not to denigrate that at all. I know that's a legitimate fear for some people, but there are ways people can help otherwise entirely in the background that we just don't have happening right now.
Definitely.
And I think if this call highlights anything, is that a group of people with very different skills can come together and be a strong voice, working with what they have to build something that can make a change. And if each group did that with what their skills are, we could make a very big dent in these problems.
Absolutely. Like we need to get to the point where us getting together and doing this doesn't feel like we're refugees or some shit. Like this should be the norm. And it's like, you don't have to work with us. You can form your own groups, do it on your own, but do something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that we really saw after we did the Victory is a Spirit letter and everything. There were people coming out of the woodwork from all over the U.S. and other countries too, saying, I actually care about this stuff, and I notice this problem too, and I want to help. And so we need to have calls like this, and we need to do things going forward where those people can get involved and we're actually achieving things and showing up for Satanists.
Exactly.
I also go back to, Lucien, you have said that it is on EM to do the communication, but I don't think it should be on you to create necessarily the structure by which that happens. Because I don't feel there's one centralized place where everyone can listen to your communication or get the call to action that needs to go out necessarily. And I mean, I'm kind of shocked to realize you don't have your own research team even. So, I wouldn't want to take away too much from all the important fighting you do to create that kind of communication structure. So if there's any way any of us can help create that, or, bring in other people that are specialized in that, I would love to see that. Because I think that is part of the problem, is that, we're a Satanist group too, so I don't think anyone, including you, was planning on having to have this very top down, this is what we need to do and you all need to do it. But at this point, we at least need to probably narrow something down. The congregation heads have their hands full with our own regions for sure. And unfortunately, also the constant drama that comes up, which you've recognized earlier, that comes up in our congregations all the time. I've seen it.
Babysitters at this point.
Yeah, some of it. But I think it would be really useful and helpful to have the congregation heads and the ministry be sort of experts on what we're fighting as far as priorities, any sources that you'd want to hand down to them, any call to action that you would really like to see. And then, I think as middle management, or whatever you want to call it, useful in disseminating that instead of this weird, don't talk about it. So anyway, I just wanted to say it's, we would love you to communicate more, but maybe there's some way other people can help put that platform or place together for you.
No, I'm dedicated to communicating more. I just offer the excuse for my having communicated so little in the past, or even up to the present here, just because just the fear I have of communicating with people at all. I've limited my contact with people to such a degree because of people's tendency to conflate any contact at all with any one of us into having some insider knowledge that they simply don't, and then try to entirely demolish our reputations over it. And I feel like those days are over now. I feel like the last attempts at grandstanding schism kind of fizzled out without the fanfare that they expected. And honestly, I feel like I owe them a thank you almost, because it really made me feel kind of liberated and feel like, now's the time to just make this real and get into the action and not just kind of watch it play out and hope nobody tries to hurt me anymore kind of thing. Because, you don't even realize how people beat you down at a certain point until something like that happens. And that's, I feel like I'm kind of recovering from that now. And now, the fight is on 100%, and fuck it, we need to be in there.
Yeah, I think they kind of helped clean house because I remember, and I think it was the first podcast I did, not you, Lucien, but everybody else on this call, just happened to line up with rolling into 2024, where I was going to be like, if you even think you want to throw a temper tantrum and leave, just leave now.
You definitely said it.
It's the beginning of the new year, just do it now.
I think you and Nooki were vibing on that.
Yeah, pack it the fuck up. It's up.
So I do also think that a lot of people don't realize, Lucien, you brought this up, that EM does have very limited resources. I would be almost willing to bet that there are plenty of congregations out there that have more people in their quote unquote leadership group than EM has resources. So
go ahead.
I need to add something real fast. Again, I need Lucien to be focused on these bills and strategizing there rather than figuring out how to solve some petty fucking drama that originated on Facebook where he is not even on at all. What? Are you serious? This shouldn't be that hard.
Well, yeah.
Well, for lack of anything else to complain about, people will often say, well, where's the money going? And, you know, I'd like to say now that the reality is that we have a lot of things we would like to litigate right now where we're being treated openly poorly by, you know, regional government groups and things like that. And we're having to prioritize which ones we pursue and which ones we don't, which fucking hurts. It hurts to not pursue some of this stuff, but the finances just aren't there. So when it comes to the idea, though, of putting the books publicly, it's like our opposition will take that into account when they're doing things. We don't want them to know where we're at. And why do we feel we have a right to keep that from everybody else? Because fuck you, you don't pay anything.
Yeah,
you know, it would be different if you're asking where are your dues going and that kind of thing. What is your buy-in for?
I'm doing the church hand.
If it's not there, then fuck off. If Malcolm and I, or EM team overall, are going to be getting rich on merchandising, then we've earned it, as far as I can figure. But, you know, if until there's a financial burden to being involved with this, you know, fuck off on that one. And I'm not directing that at anybody in particular, especially in the organization, but some of the people who have schismed have gone off in that direction in the most ridiculous way. And I don't think anybody's due explanation on that one. And it's like, if you want to see where the money's going, look at what we're doing. Exactly. I look at Women's March. They email me every fucking day talking about how they need money. And yet you look at their website, it's like, what are you doing? Nothing. They emailed about a legal fund, and I even emailed them back and asked, what litigation are you looking at involving yourselves in? What litigation have you been involved in before? And I guarantee you, they make orders of magnitude more than us in donations. They have a full staff getting paid, and they're just getting paid from donations. And all those donations seem to be doing is keeping that machine going. So we have never thrown out a crowdfunding campaign for anything that we haven't followed through on. You know, if you want to see the litigation we're doing, and you can compare it against other organizations that are clearly drawing a lot more than us, I think you'll get a sense of just how on the border we are when it comes from red to black.
Well, I think there's a lot of people that just do not realize how fucking expensive litigation is. I mean, I led litigation for a small company where we had to go after one of our executives, and it got into the six figures before I could fucking blink. I mean, I was like, holy fucking shit.
Motherfuckers have had the gall to suggest that we've been profiting from the litigation that we do. They have no idea how much of a sunk cost some of the litigation has been. And in the cases, too, where judges just thoughtlessly throw this shit out on the most spurious of grounds possible, like a couple of the litigation attempts we've had with reproductive rights, where they've said, we need to tell them in advance who's going to get pregnant and who's going to be affected by these laws, and we need their name and address on record before we can go through with these cases. That is a violation of justice on every metric you can imagine, and it costs us a significant amount of money to get there. Look at Arkansas. We've been litigating that one for 8 years, and who knows? I don't even know how much money we've thrown into that. And that doesn't include the construction of the BAP method, shipping, and all the bullshit we've had to go through, you know, as part of it, flying back and forth for depositions, just the amount of litigation that's gone into Arkansas. That money is nowhere. You know, that's I mean, eventually it might pay back, but for the most part, we get nothing back on these things. And nobody gets into this kind of litigation as a Satanist organization thinking they're going to profit from the litigation. If you were thinking there's going to be a windfall for us all based on any of this, you're wrong. We are legitimately fighting for our rights here.
Wow.
And just to piggyback on that, like when the thing happened in Boston and we got mistreated in the courts, and when the thing happened in Indiana and like we get so blatantly mistreated, it's illegal. And there's more uproar from people within TST over a photo they don't like than us being discriminated against in court. Get your priorities straight, please.
Yeah. I mean, and I know, Lucien, because I'm going to hear it, so I'm going to go ahead and say it. A bunch of people will say, but all the congregations struggle too, and we're just trying to do it. We are, and we do, and I get it. But just to be clear, you definitely weren't saying anything about the congregations trying to make funds or that they're not anything or that they don't matter, right?
Oh, no, I feel like I was speaking generally about TST, including congregations.
Yeah.
I feel like, we've had people from the inside schism out and then say, well, where's the money going? As though they threw in a bunch of money. And, we know these people absolutely paid nothing for their minimal participation that they had, or, they enjoyed a few parties with their local group or whatever else. And now they're angry they didn't get a piece of the pie or whatever they think that is. Or, they think that everybody's on salary or whatever. But, my point is people don't.
There's no TST stock options? Fuck. God damn it. I was really working hard to get those. You're just going to ruin my whole fucking night now.
You mean I've been donating to the Baffy Fund for nothing? What do you think?
My fucking buy-in, man.
No, but I think the outside world doesn't realize also that the congregations aren't these massive for-profit models that are pulling it in either. I think there are a lot of people who like to paint us overall as an organization that has different intentions and motivations than the ones that we are clearly saying that we have, because they don't want to confront those. They don't want to confront the fact that we are what we say we are. And they even say we're disingenuous by saying that we're a non-theistic religion, and that what we really mean is that we're not a religion. No, we fucking mean what we say. We're a non-theistic religion. If you don't understand that, educate your fucking self. But don't say that we're the ones being disingenuous. If we are lying about who we are, I've said it several times, I think it would be far easier for me to claim that we're some kind of theistic Satanist group, and we could be rid of all of that drama about whether a religion is legitimate for having a higher power or not. So I'm not saying any of that in attack towards any other part of the organization. I'm saying that in argument for the benefit of the organization, in my mind.
I was clear, but I know I'm going to hear it, so I was just trying to cut it off. But,
No, I appreciate that because right.
Yeah, I get sick of hearing this shit too. It's like, well, but they're doing this, then they're, yeah, we're all fucking making money off the couple t-shirts we were able to sling so that we could get together as a group and keep things going one more day and keep one more cat shelter happy and go pet a couple more dogs and go out as a group and do things.
Go bowling.
Yeah, I mean, we're all struggling to do the basic things because we are a deeply held religious belief group that's actually enjoying each other's company and talking about what we believe in, and actually there is a community, and we're just all vibing and trying to thrive off what we can do, and that goes from the bottom up. We're really literally just out there in the community trying to provide a place for people to belong.
We were really in a bad way last year because we had rolled out the abortion clinic in New Mexico, and that was a tremendous cost, and we justified that to ourselves by thinking there was no way this wasn't going to be big enough news that it would even out. We would make it up. There would be enough exposure from just having rolled out an abortion clinic that had the potential of being protected under reproductive or religious rights laws. We thought that was such a powerful thing to do that it would, that we could take that gamble and put that much money into it to have it staffed and everything else to justify it. And to our horror, there wasn't a whole lot of coverage on it. I mean, it's just everything's a gamble now, and everything threatens, like any big purchases like that threaten to collapse us. To be honest, it really does. Like it was a desperate state of affairs for a while there, and we really needed to scale back on a lot of things because we rolled out the abortion clinic. And then we thought, potentially that we just weren't going to get the kind of news coverage we used to get. People were used to what we're doing, and they weren't paying attention anymore, and that, this was kind of drying up. And, the Indiana State Capitol thing was also, we felt, indicative of that. We felt that a satanic band playing at the state capitol was sure to draw all kinds of attention and outrage and that type, and it didn't. And the show turned out fine and everything, but there wasn't that much in the way of news generated by it. And then what happens? Iowa does something superfluous, like put up a holiday display. I mean, I'm not saying that that's nothing. That's a big thing. It's great that the congregation does it. I know that's putting yourself out there, and that's dangerous. But overall, when it comes to news, it didn't seem like that would be a thing to capture everybody's paranoid imaginations, and yet it did. And then all of a sudden, DeSantis gets on the news while we're recording our second album and says his bullshit things, and I'm on CNN challenging him to a debate and everything. And then the news is kind of kept rolling from there. So we just don't know. There's nothing secure about this life. It's a high stress environment to be in.
And that was what I was about to say when you talked about Iowa. Right before you went into that, I was going to say you probably got more exposure, because I remember seeing more news stories about Iowa than I did about the abortion clinic or satanic playing. I saw it, but nothing like what happened in Iowa. And so it was like, wow, okay, that's the thing.
Satanic Planet, there was like 3 articles I can think of about it. And the abortion clinic, there were some nice long form pieces. Eventually there was the Cosmopolitan piece, and there was something the New York Times was going to do, and then they oddly kind of buried us into the New York Times was going to do a full piece on us, and it ended up getting cut a lot shorter. And then it was like they only wanted to present us like halfway into the article. And, it was nice to have that piece, but it was kind of shitty because we kind of gave them an exclusive and ended up waiting months for it. But to be honest, there wasn't really anything else in the way of media reaching out for coverage either. And I think some of the, and this is why I've been turned off to so many other self-proclaimed activist groups and, left identifying organizations and individuals, just because, they are so concerned with optics that I think they'll try to ignore us because they think it's a bad look. I mean, look at a coward like Rachel Maddow. She covers reproductive rights all the time and has somehow managed to never mention us once. And even if you don't agree with our approach, you'd think you would at least acknowledge that we're doing it, that it's doesn't matter if you agree with it or not. If you're a journalist talking about these issues, you should, give some kind of indication of who the players are, but we're seeing an environment where that's just not the case.
Yeah. I think everyone's overwhelmed and there's something happening. It feels like every damn day.
There's a horse in the hospital.
Yeah, there's a horse in the hospital. Yes.
Have you seen that? You've got, you got to Google or YouTube a horse in the hospital, and it perfectly describes from 2016 on. I'm shitting you not. I've even heard them reference it on the news before, on like some of the news talk shows we watch, because it is just so.
Yep.
No one knows how to do it because it's a horse. Is that where we're going?
Well, literally, there's a horse in the hospital.
There's a horse in the hospital. It's never happened before. I'll let you put 2 and 2 together on that one, but go listen to the bit. It's a really, really good.
We could come back together and have a conversation just on that and whatever the hell happens.
The fucking horse in the hospital.
The horse in the hospital episode. I'm sitting here like, that's gotta be a Texas thing, because I don't understand.
No, it was a comedian that was trying to put together what the entirety of, the whole 2016 and on debacle, and he surmised it as there's a horse in the hospital.
Yeah.
And I thought it was pretty.
I feel like I'm starting to get it.
Yeah. I mean, imagine what hilarity and chaos and horror would ensue with a horse in a hospital. Yeah. So it kind of goes from that.
Can you imagine? Yeah. Can you imagine you're clocking in and there's a fucking horse in the hospital that you work at? Oh my God.
I mean, it might be better than the average day.
We do have some situations where they are clearly factoring in our inability to pay the bills in their approach to us, and we're seeing that with Freedom of Information Act requests now. they're asking for these high price tags to do these data searches, and we're trying to figure out whether we have it within our budget to fight a battle in court as to whether that's appropriate or not, that their analysis as to what those costs are. And that's why, that's why it's to our advantage to play it the way we play it.
Yeah.
And we've seen just like within the past month how many bills pop up. So it's not like you can plan, like at the beginning of the year, you can't plan how much you need to spend on all this stuff or how much you need to spend because you don't know what's going to happen. Yeah,
exactly.
Well, and just to be honest, we don't have like next year's budget in our coffers at this point. Like insofar as organizations go, I think we're probably a lot more month to month than other ones. We've always kind of been just scraping by, and if we've gotten more in, we've invested it back into the projects that we're doing or the litigation that we're doing. We're going to take on something else, and that's just because we've got so much we can do. Mm-hmm. And honestly, we're limited in what we do only by that kind of resources, the kind of the kind of manpower to put into it. Like having volunteers working on things is one thing, but we if we had unlimited resources monetarily, we would be going through unlimited amounts of litigation right now as well.
Yeah, and I think people in the satanic community need to think about that. If you want to be able to fight back these very pressing things that are continuing to roll out and more all the time, then it's time to get involved and kind of back that up and support it, because it's not going to stop happening and they're going to keep coming after us.
Well, I think that,
and we got to get to a point too where we do lobbying, and that's nothing but expensive, and that's the only thing in some cases that stops us now. But if we got to the point where we were a financial powerhouse, the sad fact is then we really start getting results too.
Right. So, I guess it's figuring out what that looks like. You have that big, beautiful website, so I know you can put out some at least decent things to let people know on occasion what's the big thing happening, and then disseminate that, what you can do, action calls. So that's one awesome thing you guys have at your disposal that is an easy access for all to kind of have. And then we have other groups where we meet monthly and talk about what we're doing. So that's another way to get out to the congregation heads who really need to tune in and listen and share with their congregation so that they can engage at whatever level they're comfortable to engage at, to be involved as much as they're able and want.
Yeah. I know we've gone... Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you're good.
I was just going to say it's such a ripple effect, too, because the more we talk about this, the more publicity it gets, the more people it reaches, the broader net that we can cast to bring in the people that just care about the Constitution, who care about religious liberty and are willing to support these causes for that reason. That'll hopefully deter the Christian nationalists from putting forward these ridiculous bills. But right now, when no one cares, they're going to keep doing it.
Yeah. And I know we've gone...
But that's the thing, like the volunteer work, if you have a lot of volunteers working, that can be better than people donating money.
Yes.
Because then, they're volunteering the work that you need to have done. Like you can try to find pro bono lawyers. You can get people doing research because they believe in the cause, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Then it doesn't really matter that we're scraping by. We can keep going, no matter how badly we're scraping by. We can keep going into action. We can at least keep things up on the public front, Like, unfortunately now, we've been in a situation where we've had to pay lawyers. Matt can't work for free.
Right.
I'm sure he would do pro bono work if he could and support himself the same way, but he needs to make a living too. And our offers of pro bono support have been, we haven't had as much of that as we anticipated we might when we had started this. So
when we get it, we piss it away because we're precious little babies.
Yeah. But, I think we have good things, and I think the conversation here is a good start. And knowing that we have volunteers in each of these states and each of these countries that are wanting to be involved, that's a big start too. So, you don't want to have your name involved. You want to stay on the sidelines. Great. You can do research. You can do outreach. You could do, social media posting. You could do, as you get more up in the comfort level, you can go on TikTok and you can talk about each little thing in small bite-sized pieces. There's things all of us can do with what we have.
Yeah, depending on how public you want to be.
Even organizing fundraisers, that is day one type of shit that we should all be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and something that Nooki and I are going to work on is a news update show that we do however often about what's going on for TST TV. And that's something that other people should know about too. They can contribute to TST TV if they want to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, content is no small thing. Like I said, when people see that we are bigger than me, there are a lot of us, that this is that kind of power and having this type of group. Like I said, it's not a numbers game, but when you have a lot of people active, that's really meaningful, and other people see that too, and they realize, and they should see different faces too. People creating content is just a great thing. Podcasts like this, just different shit you post online, even if you're writing blog pieces or whatever, letters to the editor, especially when these issues are about in local press and people are sounding off their point of view. I look scary to people, at least some people I found out from looking at comments after my Fawkes appearances or whatever. But, a lot of us might look more approachable to people, and I'm very much against trying to placate and appeal to people in such a way where we try to display for them that we're just like you, kind of thing. I don't advocate for that, but I think there is enough of a diversity within TST that if people started seeing that diversity in TST, they would see there's people who look like Murphy in TST too, and not necessarily a clouded eye James Bond villain, as somebody remarked after one of my Tucker Carlson appearances.
Well, the where everybody else was the whole thing behind what we named the podcast. Satanist Next Door was named that because we are just regular average people. We could be living in your neighborhood. You wouldn't even know it unless we walked up and told you.
Or happen to have a big outdoor event where we shout Hail
Satan in the backyard. while the neighbor's doing his lawn. And it goes real quiet.
We did do one of those, and it was fun. Did I hear that right? Oh shit, I did.
So
I'm hoping all the schisming type left during the last schism, and that we have people on board now who are just looking to find a way to get involved and are looking forward to this kind of communication from EM to the rest of congregations and ministry. And I'm assuming that in general people will be happy to hear that that's what we're talking about, and that's the direction we're going.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, and you guys have your podcast where you do your own thing, TV for people to add content, and there's just so many opportunities for people to get involved, and hopefully now they'll know that they can and they'll want to, and this can be better.
Yeah, awesome. With that, I think we can wrap the podcast. If y'all want to hang on and chat some more, that's cool. But I think we can wrap with that. Yeah, the message is get out there, make some fucking noise. Don't be afraid.
If you disagree with anything we said, let's talk about it.
Yeah, let us know. You know where all of us are on different various social media. Email Lucien. I'm sure you know the way. And just let us all know what's going on, and let's get the conversation moving.
Awesome. Well, wherever you are, good day, good evening, good morning. Hail Satan.
Hail Satan.